Welcome back to the Sport Management and Leadership Speaker Series. My name is Dr. Casey Rudzinski, aka Dr. R. We are sharing stories, highlighting helpful hints, and leaving leadership lessons from professionals in the sport and athletic industry. Today's guest is Chase Deal, who is Director of Compliance at Western Kentucky University. I know Chase from our time in the National Interscholastic Athletic Administrator Association, and Chase could speak more about that. But Chase, you have the floor. Thanks for being here.
Hey, happy to be here, Casey. Thanks for having me on. I guess I'll start by giving a little bit about myself here. I'm originally from South Bend area, Mishawaka, Indiana. Played sports, wrestling, and football throughout high school, and then went to Ball State for my undergrad. There, I majored in sport administration with a minor in marketing. Actually, was fortunate enough to meet my current wife, Lauren, who we currently live now in Bowling Green with our dog Oakley. So after my undergrad, to complete my undergrad, I took an internship at USA Football with their NFL flag sales and customer service role, which was a great experience for anybody looking for internships in Indy. I highly recommend USA Football. Just a great organization all the way around. After USA Football, I decided I kind of want to head in the direction of athletic administration. As Casey mentioned, our connection began from our involvement in the NIAAA, which is the National Organization for Athletic Administrators. So I started down that path here. I was also a member of the IIAA, which is the Association for Indiana-based Athletic Administrators. Went to a few conferences. My first year, I was at Brebeuf Jesuit in Indianapolis. There, I had more of a kind of a shadow role, just trying to observe as much as possible and gain that knowledge. And then I had a similar role with a little bit more involvement the next 2 years at Indianapolis Cathedral. Just kind of started feeling things out, figuring out what I wanted to do next. And then an opportunity came by to work for the NCAA in their eligibility center, which was a great experience. I mean, getting to walk through those doors every day. I mean, the national office was just very surreal as somebody that's been a lifelong fan of sports in general. You dream of that stuff. So just a really great experience with some of the best people in the industry, in my opinion. I don't think I've met one person at the national office that was not a great person all the way around. And then on top of it, everybody there did exceptional work. So my experience at the NCAA kind of opened up my eyes to other options other than high school athletic administration. I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who was kind of showing me the ropes. She eventually took a job as the assistant director of compliance at IU Bloomington, which kind of realigned the path I was going on. I looked into it more, and compliance seemed like a very good route. So I was fortunate enough to have a lot of professional development resources at the NCAA. Reached out, they got me in contact with a few people within our national office who were kind of able to point me in the right direction as far as areas that I needed to look into, people I needed to reach out to, which eventually led to the process of applying for different opportunities. One of those opportunities was with Purdue Fort Wayne, where I talked to the assistant director of compliance, Brian Beans, who was a great resource. Essentially, the job that I was looking into, he explained to me it would be a step back, which I really appreciate the transparency. And he actually, in addition to that, offered me the opportunity to do an internship with him in compliance so I could continue my initial eligibility side with the NCAA, but also start getting more of that compliance experience. So I went on site one time, did a few Zoom calls with Brian, and he was just a great guy as far as show me the ropes. I continued just applying for different opportunities, and then was fortunate enough to be offered the director of athletic compliance at Western Kentucky University, where I am currently.
The Hilltoppers.
Yes, sir. Yep, right here. There we go. So,
So it sounds like networking is the name of the game, really, and just that's the sports industry in general, and athletics is just picking up the phone, talking to people, reaching out, and just finding good mentors, right?
100%. Yeah, I would say definitely the two biggest keys, like you said, in any industry, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. It helps if you get the good grades and you put yourself in a position, but definitely it matters about those connections. So any opportunity you have, whether it's a volunteering role or you're just hanging out, you pass somebody, introduce yourself. What's it going to hurt to, oh, nice to meet you, even if it's the head AD of your school? What do you have to lose? So go ahead and take advantage of those opportunities. I'm so glad I did. I mean, that kind of leads me up to the other side too, as far as when I talk about those volunteering opportunities. Without those, there's no way I would be where I am in my career. There was a lot of times where I'm working when I was at Cathedral, Brebeuf. Those were all unpaid. Obviously, you want to make sure you're making ends meet, have a full-time job, but you got to do what you got to do, make those sacrifices, and it eventually. I know there'll be times where it doesn't look good, but if you keep pushing, you truly love sports and you truly want to do it, you can make it happen. Just you got to take advantage of those opportunities and be willing to do those opportunities to get to where you're at.
Persistence pays off, name of the game. I'm sure many students who are student athletes or former student athletes can definitely relate to that. So just want to dive into the compliance world just a little bit, because there's probably some people out there, students, graduate students, who are not overly familiar with compliance outside of, visits to the compliance office to fill out some paperwork. So behind the scenes, what does compliance look like in a day to day? Is it change? What's involved skill set wise? Like, what are some of the things that maybe you picked up along the way that you didn't know before? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, variety of sectors within compliance, and depending on your school size, you typically will divvy those up. Essentially, right now, my focuses involve recruiting, eligibility, transfers, especially the transfer portal. That's a lot of my day doing evals of whether they're coming from a 4-year school or junior college, or they were at a 4-year school, then a JUCO, and now they're trying to come back. So each of those evaluations have different pieces that have to be met. The high school evals, that's kind of something that I brought with me from the NCAA, having that knowledge. So I still take care of that. The recruiting aspect, checking the calendars, making sure they're in the correct recruiting cycles. The athletes will know that there are 5 periods: contact, eval, quiet, dead, and no communication, essentially. So within those 5, you just got to make sure everything is compliant, should I say. You're meeting those marks. So if we have coaches going on recruiting trips, or we have student athletes coming in for visits, just making sure we're going through all of those, approving them ahead of time to make sure nothing kind of comes in on the back end.
Yeah, makes sense. That was a nice overview. And also, I think some people might forget, like, compliance applies not just to student athletes, but to everyone, right? Like, it's compliance across the board. So a lot goes in there. I'm curious. So our topic area for this week in our course, we're talking about sports gambling and sports betting. How, with your experience at the NCA, how much of that were you involved in? How much did you understand? Talk a little bit about, like, what that looks like from, like, the NCA level.
Sure. So my role at the NCAA, I was more on the academic side. Our amateurism team are the ones that deal with the sports gambling, essentially. There are different policies and procedures that go into play, but to make things simple, essentially, if you avoid it altogether, that's what we want. If you start taking chances, listening to other people, that's when you get yourself into some trouble. And even if you're doing it at the high school level, you have no idea what those decisions are going to impact later on. So my advice in that is to stay away from it completely. Obviously, with all the changes happening in sports every single day, you're going to hear a lot of things, but at the end of the day, you got to stay away from it. In my role now, I don't directly have a hand on the actual dealing with it, but if there is a violation that occurs, I would be in charge, essentially, of reporting said violations and going through that process. So at the end of the day, just I would strongly suggest when it comes to sports gambling, stay away. If you do hear information from a family member or a friend, always reach. It can never hurt to reach out to a coach, a counselor at the high school level, and then if you're at the collegiate level, obviously reach out to your compliance officer. We always prefer that if you have questions before you make decisions, you definitely come to us. We always tell our athletes our door is always open. So I mean, in general, not just the sports gambling, but compliance in general is a lot of common sense for the most part. Ethics. If you have any doubt in your mind that you should or should not be doing something, most of the time, probably shouldn't do it. But it kind of goes back to what I just said. At the end of the day, if you don't know, just go ask, and we'll always be able to point you in the right direction.
Yeah, great feedback. I want to switch gears for a second and kind of talk about the athletics industry at large when it comes to opportunities, right? And so, like, we were all students once upon a time, and things change, and we hit on like having good mentors. What other pieces of advice would you give or guidance for people who are either currently in school or on their way out of school and they're looking to transition into the industry? Like, what are some things that they could do? Maybe professional development. I know you mentioned internships. What would be some good tips and tools that they could utilize?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is going in and realizing how competitive the industry is. I'm not trying to scare anybody away. I'm being very transparent with you. As I actually had Eddie White. He works for the Pacers currently. He came to Ball State during my undergrad, talked to us a bunch of times, and just always gave very straight to the point advice. And that's I'll tell you, it's not an easy road. There's a reason why very few people with a sports degree end up working in sports, because that road to get there, it is possible, but it's not going to be easy. And anybody that tells you otherwise, I would just disregard that. But it is possible if you truly want it bad enough and are willing to do the steps to get there, you can make it happen. So what I will say, something I did during my undergrad, my program actually offered it, which was I was a part of the Sport Administration Association for Ball State, which at our intro class as a freshman, they explained what it is. My professor was actually the head of it and got me involved. So essentially as a freshman, I started out as a general member, just helping out. So they work directly with Ball State athletics. So I'm helping out of all these events. Eventually, I was able to get elected to the executive board where I was a sports representative, and I kind of had oversight of our volunteers, making sure that they were where they needed to be. If your institution does not offer something like that, I would recommend just going online and looking up volunteer opportunities. I know in Indianapolis, Indy Sports Corp is a great organization. I've volunteered probably 10 plus events, including the college football playoff national championship with Alabama and Georgia, which was a great experience. Pretty much any person that loves sports, you're going to love just those opportunities. Typically are unpaid, but just being out there in that environment every day, or not every day, just when you get the opportunity to do so, is very fulfilling. It was for me anyway, and it kind of is reassuring if you are in a place where, with sports in general, the sports industry, you're like, oh man, this is tough. Things aren't working out. I'm not really seeing a light at the end of the tunnel here, and I don't know if this is for me. Go do some volunteer events, especially another great one. They have them in every state. Special Olympics too. I've done my fair share of involvement with Special Olympics, and at the end of the day, any doubt that I had in my mind about a future career in sports was eliminated from those experiences. And on top of it, like he said, you're making great connections. You're taking the right steps, and you don't know. I mean, it could be 3 years down the road, and you show up, you very professional, presentable. You make one good impression. All it takes is one good impression. 3 years down the road, that person remembers you. They give you a call, offer you a job. So I would just say always take advantage of every professional development opportunity, any volunteer opportunity, anything that you think, oh, hey, I could put this on your resume, even if it's like a sales class or a ticket sales class. Find a way to incorporate that into your resume. And something that Eddie told me too that I'm a firm believer in is a lot of industries will tell you, keep your resume to one page, keep your resume to one page. And he said, don't do that. If you've done a bunch of stuff, put it all on there and show everything that you've done, especially coming out of college. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of industry experience, so load it all up on there. And another thing I will tell you, and this is once again from Eddie. I mean, the guy knows a lot, and he's been to some pretty high places. He was with Notre Dame, and like I said, he's with the Pacers currently. He's been there for 20 plus years. But what Eddie explained to me was that in your journey, essentially, you want to kind of have an idea where you want to go to. And this exact thing worked out for me where you want to have an idea, but let's say to get there, you have to take two more steps and you kind of have an idea where those steps are. And you go to step one, it's good. And you go to step two, it's also good. Well, next thing you know, 10 years down the road, you have a family, everything, and you're happy as could be in that third step. You didn't get to that final step, but you would have never gotten to that third step where you're happy if you weren't chasing that final one. So just because things aren't working out at first, it's okay to revise your plan. It's okay to roll with the punches. At the end of the day, it just comes down to being passionate about what you really want to do and telling yourself, hey, there's not going to be anything that's going to stop me. I'm gonna make this happen one way or another. Not saying be financially irresponsible, go in a lot of debt or anything like that. Do what you got to do to make it by, but there are so many ways to work on what you want to do in addition to your 9 to 5. If you truly want it that bad. I mean, there's times, when I was working at Indianapolis Cathedral to be flexible with their schedule, I was door dashing, doing what I got to need to do at the NCAA starting off. I was still doing that and still going to Indianapolis Cathedral. It's fresh out of college. You have the energy to do it. I know it can be taxing mentally and physically, but you can make it happen. And that's like I said earlier, I'm gonna be as realistic as me. It is a grind to get to this point. And if you can do it, you can make it.
Yeah, that's wow. Great feedback. It's all part of the journey too, right? Like everything's part of the bigger picture. And I like that you talked about how you should have like the goal in mind, right? What's the vision, right? And how you get there may look a lot different depending on your steps, but at least you know like what's the end game, what's the goal. And so obviously you're in a hub. Indianapolis seems to be the place to be these days. So for people who are in maybe not so metropolitan areas, right? Maybe people who live in more, we'll say, remote parts of the U.S. I know Indiana can also be pretty rural. What are some ways they could go about finding opportunities, whether it be like community oriented or figuring out like, what's my hub? What's where should I be, right? And
Right.
so obviously you pivoted from Indianapolis, you're down Western Kentucky, a little bit different environment, but kind of similar approach, right? And not just focusing where you're at, but seeing like the bigger picture.
100%. Yeah. So as far as the more rural areas go, I would say with that you have trying to figure out the way I want to phrase it. So within sports, my experience, I guess, slightly kind of contradicts what I'm about to say. But wasn't really in a full-time high school role before I made the transition to college. But what I would recommend first is what a lot of my professors advise, and I've realized is very true. If you want to work professional sports, don't you're better off taking an entry level in professional sports and climbing a ladder. It's really hard to have a higher tier job in college athletics, be there for 10 years, and then expect to make a lateral move to professional. It's just not realistic. You'll have to take an entry level job if you're even fortunate to be offered. So the first thing is kind of having that idea of what industry you want to have in mind. If you change your mind early on, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. The first resource that I will say is Teamwork Online. Not only do they post every single sports job for the most part every single day, they also offer networking events that you can go to. They have them all over the U.S. So even if you're in an area with not as many opportunities, you can make a little commute, go ahead. You never know who you're going to meet who you're going to impress, which could lead to a future job. Secondly, I would say once you kind of have that area of focus, that niche you want to do, let's say it's Parks and Rec. Almost every city, town, suburb in the United States, for the most part, has a Parks and Rec department. Don't be afraid to call people, email. It shows that you're persistent, that you really are going to go after it. And there's very few people in this industry that will turn down somebody offering free help, as when I did, it was at Verbuff and Cathedral. Um, I was helping them, they were helping me. It's a two-way street. And I have a buddy who's in the NBA, and his motto for his brand is run your own race. And that's kind of something that you're going to have fellow students, friends that are in other majors, going in, doing different things, having all this success. And it seems all great from the outside looking in, but at the end of the day, you don't know the negatives of that. So just stay focused, stay locked in. Like I said, you have Parks and Rec, reach out to them. Okay, they're not answering. When you call, email them. Okay, they're not answering email, take a drive, go knock on the door. Worst case scenario, do something nobody else is doing. Slip your resume through the door. Do anything you can to get noticed. Hey, if it doesn't work out, go to the next. And I mean, the same thing goes for like high school. Almost every city, town, suburb in the country has a high school. If you want to be in high school athletics, before I got the position at Brebeuf, like I said, it was all volunteer, but I sent over 118 emails before I got one yes. And you gotta truly have it in your mind made up that this is gonna happen. It has to be a non-negotiable up here. If you don't believe it yourself, it's never gonna happen. You have to be 100% sure. Hey, I'm gonna make this a reality, and that has to just be your mindset. You're gonna get 1,000 no's before you get that one opportunity, and it'll be a small opportunity, but take it and take advantage of it. Make a great impression. Make the most of those opportunities. I mean, there was nights where I would go to Cathedral High School. I would stand by a gate for 3.5 hours during a football game, sometimes in the pouring rain, come home absolutely soaked after working all day, 11 o'clock at night. Wife was like, oh, how'd it go? And I had a huge smile on my face. It was great. I loved it. We won. And I didn't care about the other stuff because I knew that's where I want to be. I knew that's where my passion was. So that's my advice is truly find kind of what sparks that little thing inside you. And you'll know.
I like that passion, and just overall commitment, right? It just you never know, what's ahead of you, but focusing on the present, right? That's a huge mindset shift. And I remember, for me personally, it was always having a new business card, right? Every place I went, I always tailored my own custom made business cards, and that was my resume back in the day when I guess people use business cards. But any way to get noticed, attention is everything, right?
100%.
So, the last thing, Chase, I want to hit on, because of the topic and you're in compliance, ethics and integrity. And I know you're a person of integrity. Obviously, you work in compliance, so ethics is a huge part of it. How do you feel as far as skill sets go, right? And we talk about like these technical skill sets that we need to have in the sports industry and experience, but we don't talk so as much about like soft skills and what that could mean, like empathy, for example, or good gestures. So if there's a person to ask about this, I know you could hit on a few hidden gems for soft skills that would definitely be game changers or separate people from the pack.
Yeah, absolutely. First thing, I'm going to kind of go with one you mentioned, empathy. If anybody knows who Gary Vee is, if not, look him up. He's one of the best motivational speakers out there, in my opinion. Great, amazing entrepreneur. Gary is a big advocate for empathy. Just at the end of the day, you never know what somebody is going through. And a lot of times you'll get responses from people that initially you see, oh, wow, that was aggressive. That was rough. And kind of what Gary preaches on is something that I've embodied, where not necessarily letting what people say or do lead to how I feel, rather than, and this is a Ted Lasso quote, be curious, not judgmental. So kind of go in and figure out, all right, hey, is there a deeper root here? Is there something that's going on? And just being a good listener, especially when somebody's upset, just listening, let them get it all out, and taking mental notes and trying to figure out, okay, what is the real root cause here? And I've I've noticed that always leads to good results when you can just listen to somebody, and even if it's all you say is, "Hey, I'm really sorry to hear about that. I cannot imagine how you feel right now." That sentence alone is a great way to start everything, because that's showing that person, okay, you are listening and you do care, and you're not letting their aggression or however they're saying anything affect you. You truly want to help. Then you can go from there as far as resolve it. So that's the first aspect as far as empathy. As far as the integrity thing, um, I've always phrased it as, and this goes back to just having great high school coaches, both football and wrestling. I was very fortunate, and they always said, like, what are you doing when nobody's around, right? So practice now as a student. You're in the hallway, there's a piece of trash on the floor. Don't say it's, oh, this is a custodian's job or something like that. Those people, you will realize custodians and janitors are just as important, if not more important, than the president, CEO of the company. So you see something on the ground, pick it up and throw it away. Or you see somebody that needs help, go help them. Don't overthink it. Just do what you know internally is the right thing to do. And then with that too, that just comes around as far as like interacting with people in general. I know there's some people that are extroverts, some people that are introverts, but control what you can. So start now. I mean, try to smile more. Anytime you pass anybody, say hello, smile. Okay, you don't have to have a full conversation. That doesn't take a lot of effort, but at the end of the day, you don't know if that person just had a terrible day, and you saying, "Hey, how you doing?" or remembering people's names. You meet them one time, you remember their name. "Hey, Josh, how you doing today?" I get so many head turns when people realize I remember their name. And I mean, you can transform somebody's day, and that feeling is more powerful than a lot of things. And just being genuine about that. And then something that I've kind of embodied as well too over the years is realizing that in your workplace, you are there more than you are at your own home. And when you walk in your own home, you don't typically just walk in or leave without saying hello and goodbye. So the same thing, I treat the workplace the same way. I walk in every day, try obviously not going to bother somebody if they're busy, but if I'm just taking something to the fridge and making sure I do that and smiling, asking how their evening was, or if it's the Monday, hey, how was your weekend? Do you do anything exciting? And when they tell you these things, or you see them kind of perk up, oh, hey, my son did this, take a mental note there, because that person is really excited about that one thing. So ask a follow-up question. Oh, hey, I didn't know you had a son. How old is he? What's in sports? And the next time you talk to them, you have something to talk about. If you are introverted, okay, hey, I know that they have a son and they said they played soccer. Okay. Hey, how's Larry? Is he still doing good at soccer? And you start building those relationships. It goes back to what Casey and I mentioned at the beginning here, where it's all about those relationships and you cultivate those over time. But essentially, you get to the point where there's not a lot of effort being put in. It goes just to being a good person, having empathy, having integrity, treating people well. Joe Rogan is a big advocate for just treating people as nice as you possibly can. And at the end of the day, things will start working out in your favor when you can do that. And if they don't, hey, at the end of the day, nobody will have anything bad to say about you, and you're a good person. And even if it's a completely different industry, I remember, oh, Casey, yeah, he was such a great guy. And you know what? That's when I was in sports, but I'm in this role now. And you know what? I just need a good person. I'm going to call Casey.
100%. So, Chase, I'm going to throw your contact info on the screen real quick. But outside of your email address, how can people reach you? How can people get in touch with you? Where can they follow you?
Sure. Yeah. I would recommend, if you don't have it already, this is actually a professional development tool as well. You guys can throw in your toolbox. Get a LinkedIn page. You can go ahead and add me there. That email also is great. So either of those two outlets, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to connect or answer any questions the best I can to try to help you out when I can. Obviously, with the academic year getting ready to start, I'll be a little bit more busy, but I'll do my best to reach out and help out in any way, shape, or form that I can. One thing I did want to mention, Casey kind of sparked my mind when he talked about the business cards. Something I did that was similar. So anytime I went to a double I triple A conference or a national conference, I had a little infographic. So it kind of just gives like 5 or 6 bullet points, whatever your elevator pitch, if you guys are aware of that, just 5 or 6 bullet points that talk about you, but have like a QR code on there. I had a little QR code and it brought up, I actually had a website. You don't have to do that. You can just make it your resume, but a website with your resume, just kind of everything about you possible. If you have some academic papers on there that you feel might be helping your case, go ahead, add those on there. But yeah, just getting your information out there in some unique fashion that people haven't seen before. Yeah, anything to get noticed. But yes, please, I encourage everyone watching this to please reach out. I'm always happy to help. I've done it a few times here with some fellow students at Ball State that have reached out, and I'm always happy to help in any way I can.
Thanks, Chase. And thanks for everyone tuning in, and see you on the next one.